Well, some say the journey to finding true happiness is living a life dedicated to faith. A new book from our very own Todd Starnes is sharing stories of Americans who did just that. He's a great Newsmax host. He's also the author of Star Spangled Blessings, Devotions for Patriots. And there he is, my good friend Todd Starnes. Todd, you know, you have written a lot of political books. Why did you decide to write this one now? I love it. I love the topic, and I think it's so timely.
I told my publisher, Rita, that I wanted to write a book that did not get me death threats. So he said, sure, why not? And there you go. It is so good to see you, and we're just huge fans of your show on Newsmax and your radio show as well. You know, Rita, it really is amazing when you look at American history, and it's very clear that God has blessed our nation. There's no doubt about it. And especially when you look at really the past couple of years, you can see the divine intervention from Butler County, Pennsylvania, through Election Day in November, and what's happening now in our country. It's truly remarkable. And I wanted to write a book that explained why. Why is God blessing America? And what is it that we as Americans ought to be doing to honor God in our daily lives? So my good friend Michelle Cox, she is a fellow writer. She and I put together this really fun book telling great stories of how God has used some pretty amazing and strange people to bless our great country.
Well, you know what's interesting, and you really covered the gambit. One of the people in there, I learned a lot about Eisenhower, talk about his role and so many of the things, including obviously our money, but there's a lot of things that his faith played a role that has just transcended time.
Yeah, and again, these devotions are really meant for the entire family. So you can actually sit around and maybe on the breakfast table and have these conversations with your kids or grandkids. And Dwight Eisenhower, we found out, was the most religious president we've had in American history. As a matter of fact, he was also the only president to be baptized after he was inaugurated. So just shortly after being inaugurated president, he was baptized in Washington, D.C. Lord knows a number of our politicians could follow that good example these days. Yeah, Eisenhower was really instrumental in using the presidency as a bully pulpit to advocate for religious liberty. And the reason was fascinating, Rita. It turns out that Eisenhower, along with Ronald Reagan and many of the conservative leaders of the time, William F. Buckley Jr., they were fighting communism. And they understood right away that the fight wasn't a political fight as much as it was a spiritual fight. And so Eisenhower really advanced this notion of being able to talk about your Christian faith in the public marketplace. Rita, something very interesting happened during Eisenhower's term in office. Church attendance in America rose 20%. 69% of Americans went to church.
Wow, what an amazing, amazing number. I didn't know that. Also, obviously, Reagan, you brought up Reagan there. He certainly, faith was a huge central focus of his life. How did he really transform it, not only just personally, but also share it to America and the world? He really brought it out in the open and made it a part of many of his decisions.
He really did, Rita, and I could have written 2 or 3 devotion books just based on Ronald Reagan's faith and how important his faith was in just about every single policy that he wrote. And Michelle and I tell a beautiful story in the book, a very little-known story, about how Ronald Reagan wrote a letter sharing the plan of salvation to his father-in-law, who was not a believer at the time. And it was really interesting that in the throes of the chaos of the Cold War and all the things that were happening in our nation at the time, Ronald Reagan understood that the main task at hand was to save one soul at a time. And he did that right there. He penned this incredible letter, which we publish in the book, right there in the Oval Office. And Rita, we also talk about President Trump and his faith. And, you know, the president gets pushed around quite a bit and mocked for his faith in God. But I've discovered through conversations with the president that he does have a faith. And he actually encouraged Americans, and we write about this in the book, that if we really want to make America great again, America has to get back to praying again. And America has to start reading the Americans have to start reading their Bibles again.
You know, also, and you know this all too well, Todd, that after obviously what happened in Butler, too, he has said that he feels God saved him, that he has really turned into his faith and his belief in God. And that was a transformative moment, obviously, for the world, but certainly for him. What do you hope also people take away from this book? What do you hope many of us can get inspired from some of these great leaders? And we're learning so much. I love the topic, Todd.
Well, thank you. Look, I think that we all need to step back and understand there's a reason why God has blessed us. The reason why we are the only nation on the planet where you can practice your faith freely. And that reason is because of the tenets of the Judeo-Christian belief system that our founding fathers brought to this country and that our founding fathers based all of our founding documents on. So our encouragement is really for families, as Ronald Reagan said, American greatness doesn't start in Washington, D.C. American greatness starts around the breakfast table, around the supper table. So we want moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas to have those conversations with their young people, with their families, so that together our families might be able to keep making this country great.
Well, I encourage everybody to get Star-Spangled Blessings. What an awesome, awesome, timely, and inspiring book on so many levels from my dear friend, the great Todd Starnes. Todd, it's so wonderful to see you. Congrats.
Thanks, Rita. We love you.
Thank you. Right back at you, my friend. So much. Thank you. Love you.